Hello and welcome to another episode here at The Latest with Law Simplified. I am your host, Farine Ali, and today we're joined by one of the most prominent figures in the legal industry. Our guest has given over half a century of his life to law, and of that, over 33 years to judiciary. He has presided in some of the most landmark cases which have changed our lives, made the headline news, and have often appeared in our law exams, and I can tell you that from my personal experience. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so honoured to present to you former Supreme Court Judge and President Lord Neuberger. I want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors. Our headline sponsors are Umbrella Legal. Our silver sponsors are Zakia Khalid, freelance solicitor, Ligertica, powered by Umair Zahid, and GFWE Consulting LLP. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here we go, Lord Neuberger. Hello, Lord Neuberger. Welcome to Law Simplified. How are you?
I'm pretty well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's a great honour for us. We're now going to move on to a question about artificial intelligence and its role. Effectively, our sponsor, Ligertica, I should say that they are somewhat like a legal Amazon. So potential clients can go on there, book a lawyer, and have the lawyer deal with the case end to end on the platform. But they also have a tool which the prospective client can use and effectively find out what the possible result of the matter could be. So can I ask you, what are your views on the integration of artificial intelligence for the purposes of predicting legal decisions? Now, Ligertica actually have a bank of previous cases which the artificial intelligence sifts through to come up with an outcome.
I think it's very difficult, to me anyway, to have an objection to it, in the sense that it seems to me it's sort of both in terms of censoring freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and in the sense of trying to curtail science. I believe in France that there are some provisions in the legislation that say you can't do that sort of thing. But I recoil at that, really. It seems to me that it's a perfectly proper thing to do. And I know that it's said, I've not seen the details, that when it comes to patent cases in the United States, for example, that some AI platform has a better record than most expert patent attorneys in America. Having said that, I think that sort of thing is entirely, one shouldn't legislate against it and it's entirely appropriate. I can't pretend to feeling comfortable about it because it seems to me somehow slightly upsetting that cases should be decided by a machine, or people should basically settle their cases on the basis of a machine rather than the human. But in the end, machines are designed by human. I know that learning machines teach themselves, but they start off with human input. But I think the big problem with using it, for instance, to decide cases instead of judges, as opposed to giving diagnoses or doing medicine, is that if you've got a mole on your back, and you're told that the top dermatologist will get it right 95% of the time as to whether it's a melanoma, but this machine, AI machine, will get it right 99.99% of the time. You got any sense, you'll ask for the machine because it's more likely to get it right. You'd have thought, therefore, that if you want advice on a legal problem and you've got a machine that can do it, which one day it looks quite possible we will have, that you go for the machine. But the big problem with law is that when it comes to your melanoma, you couldn't care less how the machine got the answer. But if you're told you've lost the case by the machine, you want to know why. And it may be that as these machines develop, they will be able to give you the reason.
Yes.
But at the moment, there's the black box problem. The answer, of course, is the rather unsettling answer that you get in response to what I've just said, is that's all fine and dandy, but there's no blacker box than the human brain. And a judge might say, these are my reasons. But how do we know they really are his or her reasons?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting area. But you may come to a point where it is realized that the human decision maker adds nothing. It's quite frightening to someone like me and maybe many other people. But if machines do make better decisions, and they'll certainly make them quicker and cheaper than humans, it would be a bit strange not to use them for that.
For sure.
But then at that point, are they just going to take over everything?
Well, actually, with Legertica, the great thing is, David, that you can actually download a report. It gives you a clear overview as to how it's reached that decision, and it compares it against previous cases and the outcomes of previous cases. Their vision is to equalise access to law, and effectively to allow people to simply go on there and be able to, be assisted rather than having to effectively book a lawyer, especially those people that come from a lower socioeconomic background.
I mean, that's absolutely right. A point I didn't make, but you're absolutely right to emphasise. It makes law available to all. Personally, I think the worry about an AI judge is misconceived, because I think what will happen is, if we get to the point where machines are more reliable, the parties will simply go to a machine. They won't even go to court. They'll simply ask a machine, and the machine will give them the answer. And if the machines are reliable, both parties will get the same answer. The main problem is, what does the machine do when there's a conflict of evidence? I suppose what it does is to look at the documents or look at the inherent likelihood and say, you'll be believed, you won't.
Yeah.
And in the same way that on law, it will say, well, in this area, how it decides it on point on estoppel or something like that, or the balance of convenience is. But I would like to think that a machine isn't going to be able to do the job of a serious lawyer or the job of a judge. But I'm afraid I think that it will be able to. I say I'm afraid because I don't like the thought of it. It's sort of innate conservatism, but once you have machines doing that, what are humans going to do?
Absolutely.
Are we going to be the pets of the machines? Or are they going to kill us all because we're using valuable resources they want?
Hopefully not, David.
Or are they simply going to ignore us?
Probably. But the great thing about Legertica is that you can go on there for preliminary sort of outcome, and then you can go onto their platform and hire a lawyer. And I suppose you probably agree with me that perhaps it makes law more accessible. Being able to go onto a platform.
I think it does, and I think one of the problems is it's very fast moving.
Yes, it is.
So anyone who's got to grips with some system will suddenly find that they may think it's a modern system, but something's overtaken it. And I don't know how many generations of ChatGPT there have already been, but it is pretty remarkable.
It is indeed. Do check it out, though, David. I'll send you a link.
Will you send me a link? I'd be jolly interested
sure.
to see it.
We're now going to move on to, very lastly, a quick fire round. What advice would you give to your younger self, David?
Well, reflecting what I've said already, be lucky. And otherwise, I think what I'd say is, in your 20s, don't worry too much if you don't find the right thing to do, provided you're busy and doing something vaguely worthwhile, vaguely educational in the broadest sense. That's fine. You're probably, subject to AI taking over everything, you're probably going to work till you're 85.
Yeah.
And if you don't settle down to something until you're 30 or older, it doesn't matter, because you'll still have 55 years probably, life being what it is, you'll change jobs anyway.